Hey guys, how's it going? Jared from the Vinyl Corner, and today I will be reviewing the latest from Earl Sweatshirt called Some Rap Songs. If you don't know who Earl is, he is a California rapper who was connected to the once infamous Odd Future project with Tyler the Creator, Frank Ocean, etc. But Earl has always been one of the more interesting guys in that crew simply because he always showed a knack for lyricism, for rhyme schemes and such. He really understands rap music to its core, and he's always taken influence from a lot of people like MF Doom and Jay Dilla. So he's got a really interesting group of inspirations going behind him, and he's been releasing music since 2010, and it's always been pretty consistently good to me. His debut in 2010 released when he was just 15, and he was already showing a great knack of knowing how to tell a story and how to rhyme. It's kind of immature, but again, he was 15, but he was showing a lot of rapping prowess on it. Doris released in 2013 and was a very big maturation for him, and it's definitely an excellent piece of music in its own right. And then in 2015 came his magnum opus thus far, which is I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. One of my personal favorite albums of all time. If you guys know me through anything, that album means a ton to me. So yeah, I was very excited going into this. Earl is my favorite rapper right now. I just think he doesn't release shit. He always releases quality music because he knows that he keeps his fans waiting, and that, you know, he takes his time to release good music like this. So yeah, this album is jam-packed with stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. So I kind of apologize in advance. I'm going to be mentioning a few terms a lot: anxiety, depression, mental illness, and abstract. All of these things are key elements to this record, in my opinion, and a lot of the ideas and a lot of the aesthetic of this record is focused on those ideas and comes back in some sort of way. So yeah, I apologize if I say those terms a lot, but they are very key on all of these songs. There are 15 songs, 25 minutes, but every song is using every single second correctly and does not waste your time. The opener, Shattering Dreams, is a perfect encapsulation of what this record is about to give you. It is pretty downtrodden, kind of lo-fi, very laid back, taking its time with its approach. Again, very abstract. It has a really interesting little guitar sample in the instrumental, but it has this group vocal, this little hum, and it adds just this really creepy, kind of dusty sensibility, and again, that flows throughout the whole record. This album sounds like he was sampling dusty ass records, and it really creates such an interesting atmosphere. And again, just for a short song like this, it creates such an atmosphere that'll guide you through the project. Continuing forward, we have Red Water, and again, this adds a whole nother layer to the atmosphere of this album. This really shows off the key feature of this album for me that I feel like resonates most with me personally, and that is Earl's choice of how he mixes certain things. A lot of the times his vocals feel like they're submerged in water, or they're very like tight, contained, like claustrophobic, and that adds so much to the atmosphere. Like I said, it adds more to the layering of this idea of all of his mental illness, the anxiety, the depression, how choking it is, how hard it can be, and how overbearing it can be. And on this song, he talks a lot about how for a while he was living his life on autopilot because of these things, and then eventually his dad's unfortunate passing happened, and it was really a gigantic moment for him, and the song takes a quick look at that, and it's just, again, really lo-fi, really dark, downtrodden. It uses this vocal sample that's like stretched and echoed, and it's really just kind of haunting. It gives off this atmosphere of dread and reality. Again, it's just another really just scarcely produced but very hard-hitting piece. Cold Summers depicts a really harsh look at the current police situation going on here in America, especially towards the African American community. It's a really dark and very just played straight to the point depiction of a house raid, and it just really is hard to listen to, but it's very real, and you can tell that Earl really cares about this. And it shows how it affects him on a personal level, and how people try and help him and tell him like that can't affect you because it's not helping you or affecting you. And Earl is just like gets all this overwhelming stuff out of it because he feels so alone and so targeted in the world. And again, these are just contained in this really twinkly, shimmering, but very repressed instrumental. Just a couple like bass hits and a couple really basic drums that are just produced super lo-fi again, but it just carries the weight of this record. And again, it's just so grim and real, and it doesn't need that touching up, and it feels like this instrumental plays that part perfectly. I'm not going to talk too briefly about either of the two singles, but the next one in the track listing is Nowhere to Go, which was the first single off of this. And I was really excited when I heard this as a single because it showed that Earl was going in this new, strange direction. And again, as soon as I heard this song, I knew the mixing was going to be important, because towards the end of the song, you just hear him getting lost in his thoughts and like this haze of life, and he's just on autopilot. But you can tell that sometimes it's just like drowning him out. Certain times it'll just cut to this really drowned out part of his vocal, but then it'll come right out of it. And as somebody that has a lot of the same issues as Earl and has gone through some of the same struggles to an extent, I definitely understand where this mixing is coming from. Again, it plays a key part in the whole aesthetic of this record, and it's just very personal to me because, again, I felt a lot of this and I definitely resonate with it. So yeah, this song is just fucking awesome, and it was definitely one of the better tracks to pick for releasing as the first single. December 24th is definitely one of the heaviest hitting songs on here. It's so densely packed to the brim. This beat is super staticky, has a really anxious, down low, like kind of creeping, stalkerish vibe. But Earl spits these amazing bars about living life as a drug dealer and all of the problems that come with that, getting harassed by police, having to earn your keep, and having people not understand you and actually shun you because you're just trying to survive in this cold, cold world. But there's this one part where Earl spits a line about his grandmother, and then the whole idea of this song shifts abruptly into this kind of diatribe about life and death and how they're so intertwined in one another. And this is like the first look at that, at least so bluntly. This whole album has this kind of duality feeling of life and death and understanding and not understanding, and just very gray in the middle, just very stuck in the middle kind of approach to it. And this is just one of the more hard-hitting, straightforward songs. I could definitely see people who don't even enjoy the rest of this album maybe enjoying this one, because it is just so to the point and it tells a great story in a really interesting fashion. And again, Earl is one of the most gifted rappers right now. Like, he takes these songs, most of them are like a minute and a half, doesn't waste any time. Most of these songs abruptly transition into one another, but they fit so perfectly because of these stories that are being told, and this idea of being lost and on autopilot and only remembering certain parts of life when they're kind of necessary to remember. So yeah, this song is just absolutely amazing, as is the rest of it so far. The next track, On the Way, is definitely one of the more upbeat songs on the album. You can definitely tell, like, kind of piggybacking off of what I was just saying, these emotions kind of just become so gray that you only remember really important highlights and a lot of low times in your life. But this is definitely one of, like, the 2 or 3 songs on here that is distinctly, like, hopeful to me. It features Standing on the Corner, who are an awesome experimental hip-hop band. I can't do them justice. I saw them open for King Cruel, and I thought they were absolutely amazing, and I was really happy to see that they formed a relationship with Earl and actually ended up on the album. But yeah, this instrumental in co-production with them is this really weirdly kind of lo-fi indie sound until about like the last 25 to 30 seconds, and then there's this instrumental breakdown that pushes into the next song. But yeah, this is just kind of a nice little breathing for air moment, because the whole album up to this point has just been chokingly sad, depressed, anxious, and yeah, this was a much needed breather for just a quick moment of relief. So next up is The Mint, which is one of the other singles that was released, the second single, and so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But again, just really great lo-fi instrumental going on here, extremely heady. It's actually the longest song on the album, clocking in at 2 minutes and like 45 seconds. But yeah, both of the guys on here are spitting some extremely crazy, in-depth bars, and the instrumental's just super laid back, allows them so much room to play with their cadence and their flow. So yeah, then that pushes into the bends, which is absolutely one of my favorites on here. It's one of the more distinctly aggressive and confident songs on here. Again, connecting to this whole theme of you only remember these very intense moments of emotion through all of this trauma and living in the gray area all the time. But yeah, Earl is spitting a really intense couple verses here about Odd Future and how they've grown and what directions they've gone and all of that. And it's extremely confident, charismatic, and yeah, it just shows a slight other side of Earl that isn't seen too much on the rest of the album. Also with the bends, the instrumental on it is just fire. I absolutely love the vocal track that he chose to sample on here and the way he sampled it. It's super skittery, super just anxious, just super in your face. It's really, again, matches the tone, the very rare tone of confidence that is on here. And then this pushes into the minute-long song Lucy, which is one of the most densely packed minutes I've ever had the pleasure of listening to in musical history. This song, again, is only a minute long, but it is going to take me longer than that to describe everything that's going on in here. To start off with Lucy, the instrumental is this crazy piano-led one. Again, very dusty, very lo-fi, but it's got this amazing sample of, I can't quite tell if it's a bass or if it's a wah-wah sampled guitar, but it's just so like skittery, glitching, but not in like a distorted way. It just like wah, it's just like the way that it's repeating over and over again just sounds like a broken record, like it keeps skipping over the same part. And again, adding to that dusty lo-fi aesthetic of the instrumental. And then Earl is using every single line on this song. Like I said, it's only a minute long, but literally every line has something to dissect here. But generally speaking, it is an attack on people who are talking shit on Earl or were spreading rumors and just anybody that thought ill of him. And then towards the end, we get a little bit more of that confidence with him talking about how he knows he's held in a high regard. But again, it doesn't last too long as we transition into the next song. I love how the last song transitions into Azúcar. Sorry if I butchered that, but it is Spanish for sugar. And it starts with this line where Earl says pedal to the metal, and his vocals sound like he's just absolutely submerged. And it brought up images of, you know, going to drive to get rid of some stress and just losing control, having a little bit of a breakdown, putting your pedal to the metal. So yeah, that really hit me hard the first time I heard it. It actually brought out like a physical reaction in me. I like welled up with emotion because like I've thought these things. I've never necessarily put them into action, but I've definitely thought about it before. Just like I feel like a lot of humans can probably relate to. But yeah, this song goes into a talk about how after a while of sustaining a lot of issues, whether they be physical or mental, how your friends lose motivation trying to keep up with you, you lose motivation, and after a while you realize it's too late, and you know, you have to kind of just adjust and fix this and try and make your own opinions and be your own person after a while. You know, he's going through this transitionary phase in his life, and I'm going through a very similar one myself. So yeah, this song hits me very hard personally. Definitely another one of the absolute highlights for me. So after a strategically abrupt transition, we get into Eclipse, which is probably my personal favorite song on the album. This beat is otherworldly. Surreal does not even begin to describe it. It's so, again, lo-fi. It's super downtrodden and kind of crunchy, but it has this outer spacey, surreal, otherworldly, dreamlike state to it. And it's just so perfect for Earl to spit on because it lets him talk about how he's closed himself off again from the hook on this thing, talking about how this eclipse is closing his openness and how this has made him miss opportunities socially and even maybe with his work life, you know. So yeah, it's a really dense look at introverts and having to go through that, at least Earl's experience with that. And again, as someone who definitely misses out on social occasions due to my introverted nature, I definitely relate. And I just absolutely love the pairing of the beat with the lyrical approach to this and how Earl is just flowing effortlessly over this. And yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So piggybacking off of the introverted overthinking nature, we get into Veins, which is a song that looks at dealing with the past and having to accept it and grow from it. Earl shouts out a lot of rappers in the game, not specific names, but just saying, you know, thank you for what you've done. He's appreciating the originals who have paved the way from him. And he most importantly thanks his mother, who, if you guys have followed Earl's career, you know that he's had an extremely strained relationship for her. So you can tell that, you know, he's kind of understood a lot of the things that he once thought were evil from his mother, and he's learning to accept it as love and to, you know, kind of start understanding more things. As you grow older, you understand things your parents did that you may not have when you were younger. So yeah, it's a fantastic look at that. And then it transitions into playing possum, which this is a hard cut that always throws me off in the best way possible. This song is weirdly downtrodden, but again, kind of hopeful, but it's really mainly sad. It's called Playing Possum, and Earl essentially samples his mother and his deceased father, who, if you guys know, was a famous African poet. He's very connected to the early leanings of hip hop. So, yeah, it's a really soul crushing like feeling listening to this song because as with the title, Earl's kind of using his parents' vocals and what he chose to sample from them to kind of deal with the death of his dad and to understand that and to move forward with that. You know, he's kind of clamming up and playing dead like a possum does in the face of a grave situation. And yeah, it's just really chilling every time. This is definitely one of the songs that I could see people disliking because it is just kind of really abrupt into it. But I think it adds perfectly, especially continuing into Peanut. Peanut is the second to last song, as I just mentioned. And this, if you guys know Earl's career, is the most close thing that we've gotten to like a solace track on an official Earl album. I mean, this whole album is extremely heady, lo-fi, abstract like Solace, but this one is just to the tooth depressing as shit. Like this song, the first time I heard it, you can ask my one friend, he literally saw me cry because I was just like so emotionally struck with this song. It's just, again, a very straightforward look at feeling alone in the world, you know, dealing with your depression and your illnesses. And then Earl has it a really sad set of tales about how his family didn't accept his professional career, possibly, or at least that's how I took the lyrics. And then towards the end of the song, it makes reference to a man named Hugh, which is Hugh Mescalella, or excuse me if I mispronounced that. But he was a friend of Earl's dad's and a very famous jazz musician. And yeah, this leads into the very last song, Riot, which is just an instrumental. Again, this is one of the more upbeat songs, but it has a really touching sense of non-finality. You really don't get many questions answered, and you know, you're kind of just left there at the end, like at the end of a movie where you're kind of just shrug and you walk off in the distance and you try and just figure out where life goes from there, and maybe you'll never know. But yeah, it's an extremely interesting way to end the album, but I think it was almost the perfect note because after all of this scarily real talk on this album, this little last piece gives you a little hope that with your own self-preservation in mind, that you can move forward and you can grow and you can look at things hopeful and you can hopefully change your lifestyle into growth and progression. So yeah, this album just wow. I kind of wanted to talk about the album more generally as a whole because I feel like there's a lot going on in these 25 minutes that runs through the entire length that's very important. The first one is definitely, like I said, the mixing earlier. I've mentioned it a couple of times, so I'm not going to mention it too much, but the mixing really does distinctly show off certain songs and moods and tones. And the next thing is the transitions. Never since hearing Mad Villain for the first time have I ever heard transitions that are so abrupt and shouldn't work so well together. I think it really comes down to, again, the aesthetic and the theme of this record, that it's all about depression and being on autopilot and going through life with mental disorders and, you know, kind of having a fragmented memory and, you know, choosing substances and things to cope with things instead of facing them. And it's just a really brutal view of life and one man going through his struggles in an absolutely beautifully out of sync, idiosyncratic, and absolutely perfect way possible. I'm really not afraid to say it, but this is one of the best things I've heard from this decade. It hits me emotionally every time, and every single time I listen to it, I pick up on a new double entendre, a new metaphor, a new piece of the instrumental that's so buried in the mix that you can barely hear it. There is so much to digest here. This, I don't want to make the comparison again, but I kind of have to. It's very Mad Villain-esque. It's very depressed. It's very anxious. It's very scared of the world, the racism, the judgment of the world, the judgment from your family. But it's just an extremely real view of one man's reality, and someone like me who can relate gets a lot out of something like this. And yeah, this is just, again, one of the absolute best albums I've heard this decade, and it's going to get the obvious rating of a 10 out of 10 from me. I'm sure I forgot to say some things about this album in this review. There is a lot going on in these 25 minutes. You can listen to a song for an hour and still be finding new things and still not be sick of it. I mean, I've listened to the album nearly 24 times now, and I'm still blasting it on repeat, and I still think it's going to be a crucial piece of hip-hop's current landscape going into the future. So yeah, absolutely incredible album. If you guys have not given this one a chance, I highly recommend so. Just one of the best things I've heard come from music since I've started consuming it rapidly. So yeah, let me know if you guys have listened to this album and what your thoughts are, or if you're going to listen to it. And while you're down there, hit that description box, check out all those links, like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, guys, have a nice day.